I was just thinking, I kind of feel like a little girl in a Justin Bieber concert interviewing you. So,
So your panties are wet. Is that what I'm hearing?
yeah. All right. Great. So, I'm here with Tripp Lanier. Tripp is a coach of mine, former coach, maybe future coach of mine, and he is a coach to influencers and host of the amazing New Man podcast. And I just wanted to invite Tripp Butt today to talk about um, his experiences with creativity, resistance, inner authority, and whatever else kind of arises. So yeah, so we'll just kind of dive in, and if I need to check my set list like a amateur comedian, I've got my little list here. So, but we'll start with what's going on with you. What's going on with you in your world trip? Like, what's I know you're writing a book, and I'm wondering if like what's the thing that's most alive for you right now in your coaching practice and your creative world?
Well, yeah, the book has been a big deal. I just sent the manuscript, my edited version to the publisher yesterday. So I'm in this place of what am I doing? Who the hell am I? And there'll be a lot more work from here on out. But there's this, yeah. I just crossed a big milestone with the book, and it feels powerful and confusing, and I definitely see myself at a threshold of, okay, I've been a coach, I've been a guy that creates a lot of content by interviewing people, and now I'm stepping into a different realm of integrating the teacher in me too. So that's I definitely feel as like, oh, I really don't know what this next year is going to look like. Whereas before, I kind of had a sense of where my years were going and what I was creating. But now it feels really wide open about what could happen this year in terms of where I'll go with my coaching and where my teaching and all that kind of stuff may lead. So
Yeah,
it's exciting. It definitely feels like a turning point in my life and in my career, a major one. And
nice.
not that it all depends on the book. It just means that where I am, how I'm shifting, and how I'm approaching my work is going to be very different from here out.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, like when you as you shared that, I was the thing that stuck out to me was like you stepping more into that role of the teacher, and kind of being excited about being at that threshold too, and all the what's coming next. But um, I've always kind of gravitated towards you as like a coach and like thought leader when it seems like you're sharing your kind of authentic thoughts on things. And
Hmm.
yeah, that's kind of like my first hit, and I'm excited to actually see what that looks like for you. Yeah, and
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
excited to share it. It's definitely there are moments that I'm like, oh my God, did I really write that? Because my approach to this is it's pretty irreverent. There's a section in there about how I went to a proctologist and learned a life lesson as this doctor had his hand in my ass. There's a lot of
that's
stuff that
perfect.
doesn't really fit in with the whole kind of personal development stuff,
Yeah, yeah,
and so it's my take on it. It's my approach, and it's not going to fit in. It's going to ruffle some feathers, if, for people that need to have things a certain way. So
yeah. I love that,
it's
man.
not meant to do that. I'm not trying to be
Yeah,
antagonistic.
yeah,
It's just that's just how I am. I don't.
yeah. That's who you are, right? Like that's who you
Yeah.
who you want to be, and you've had these
That's where it's
experiences.
fun. Like I
Yeah,
was like, if
yeah,
I'm going to write a book, this is where it's got to be fun. This is the book I wish I would have read. Yeah, been able to read 20 years ago. When I was just getting started on the personal development path and was looking for guidance. There's got to be more to this life than X, Y, and Z. What else is
yeah,
there? I
yeah,
wanted something with depth, but also humor and it kind of like I got to be me, but at the same time, I got to explore what was beyond me, that kind of thing. So
I love it, man. I love. I think that's a deeper like another part is what I like in the past and working with you, and also in your content is like your humor plus your kind of like no nonsense. Like this is kind of a very practical, direct kind of point that I'm making, and you're putting blending in the humor with it. Um, yeah, I just wanted to share that that's a super and the fun piece. Like I think that's yeah, like in my own life, I'm leaning more into that too. Around like this, how can I just make these things fun and instead of just just go along with the things that seem like this is what you're supposed to do, or this is how you do things, and then so it's inspiring to hear you reflect that or share that, and
Yeah, there's a
just
theme
remind
in
me.
the book around fun. There's a theme in the book around play and how we're at our best when we integrate those things. It's like, oh, oh no, I need to take this seriously and I need to get it right. That's where we lose our creativity. It's where we lose our curiosity. Or we don't want to take chances there. And it's like,
Yeah,
that's a weaker position to me.
yeah. It's
So
like, oh man, it's like that's like where the juice is at, or something
yeah,
like that. Yeah, it's like hell yeah,
yeah.
very cool. Um, I know that you've done I know you have a lot of content around resistance and the things that get in people's way and the men and women's way and creating the lives or the professions and things they want. Like for yourself and resistance now, like what is your what do you find your relationship is when like today to resistance? Like is it something where you're just plowing through it? Do you have like are you in touch with like what you've called in the past like the small self, and like how do you have like an interior relationship with resistance, or you look at it as an enemy? Like I'm just kind of curious, like what is your working relationship with resistance like for you in the
It's a constant.
yeah
It's not and one of the things that it constantly does is surprise me. And for my own resistance, it's not like, oh, I got it licked,
yeah
right?
yeah
I expect it. I think that's the biggest mistake we can make is think that, oh, wow, I've licked it. I've done. I
yeah
don't have to worry about resistance anymore. I crossed that threshold, and it's like, oh no. So it's more of just like it's catching up to me now. Is there's another level of things for me to explore in the next phase of growing the business that I have and putting this book out in the world, and it's just like, wow, look, I want to go stick my head in the sand again. I don't want to
mm-hmm.
research this stuff. I don't even want to look around. I don't want to have anything to do. And I was like, wow, that's fascinating. Like there I go again, trying to find ways to avoid anything that might be might be uncomfortable, or it might feel like a risk to my time or energy or money,
yeah
or especially it might make me look stupid or make me look bad. So
yeah
that's just the constant. And so it just shows up in different ways, and that's where I get surprised. Like, oh wow, that's ingenious. How you just found another angle to come in and want to sideswipe things. So I I think that's the big thing is just be on the lookout for it. It is going to show up. So how? Let's how what's it going to look like?
yeah
And we don't need to beat ourselves up for having resistance. Unfortunately, I think people get like, oh man, what's wrong with me if I have this? Why do I want to slow down, or why am I getting in my own way? It's just like, no, it's going to be there. How do you want to respond to that? I think that's just like, you don't have to get into this thing. People want to process it.
yeah yeah
Must be something wrong with me. I must need to heal something from my past
yeah
to be able to. It's just like, well, not really.
yeah
You
yeah
can just go do the thing that scares you and see how you feel on the other side, because that to me is where we transform. That little
yeah
kid that's out on the end of the diving board doesn't need to go and have a big process to figure out why he doesn't want to jump off the diving board. He's just scared.
yeah
So, but that kid, the version of him that's on the other side of that jump where he jumps in and he's like, oh my God, that was scary, but you know what? I want to do it again. He's transformed by that event. So I tend to favor, hey, let's go do the thing we're scared to do and see how we are after the fact.
yeah
Because a lot of times that thing that we thought was a huge big deal just gets blown out of the
yeah
water whenever we're on the other side. It's like, oh, that really wasn't it. I was just scared.
yeah
So I tend to not give resistance. No, resistance wants nothing more for us than to sit around and talk about resistance.
gotcha like
Because in the
we're
time that we're sitting around talking about resistance, we could go do the thing we've been resisting,
yeah yeah
right?
yeah yeah
So it just loves this, like, oh my God, let's just look in the mirror and talk about how fucking big a deal this thing is. And instead of like, well, what's the conversation I'm resisting? What's the thing that would really help me? I know I've got a vision. I know I got a thing that I want to do. I know I've got an impact I want to make. So what's the thing I'm resisting? Oh no, let's go process this for a while. Now, I'm not against process. I'm not against learning. I'm not against
sure
healing. I want to be really clear. But there's an aspect of resistance, especially in a certain aspect of the world where it's like we think more processing about it is going to make it easier, and it's just like, no, at some point you just got to jump off the diving board.
yeah I love that you're saying that, and I think and I like that you said you're not against like things like process healing and learning, but yeah, like, but it's just not spending time like figuring out how to work a resistance, but how do you want to respond? Like, I think that's like where creative power, yeah, your creative power like is waiting on you, I guess you could say, instead of just like um, having to go back and tinker and look at yourself as less than able or yeah, becoming self-deprecating or something like that, some version of
I'm
that.
not confident, so there must be something wrong with me. I'm not inspired, so there must be something wrong with me. I'm not following through, so there must be something wrong with me. It's like, not really.
Yeah,
It doesn't
yeah,
have to be
yeah,
that way. We don't have to
yeah,
wait till we're in the mood or we feel the green lights. If we know, if there's a knowing, right? I know that I'm going to need to, that brushing my teeth is in my best interest. I know that uh, moving my body and eating a certain way is in my best interest. I don't have to have a debate around that.
yeah.
So when we have a knowing around that, with regards to our calling or our business or the things that we're trying to create in our lives, I don't think we need to get into a big debate about is it
Mm,
wrong or right or anything. It's just I know this is what I need to do if I'm committed to creating this thing in the world, and I just know that along the way there's going to be resistance that shows up and wants to block it.
yeah.
So
Awesome.
I think it can be simpler in
Yeah.
that regard. A lot of times people just want to make it more complex than it needs to be because then they don't have to do it.
Thanks for putting it down like that. Well, I think one of the things I really like with that you talk about and that I've worked on with you too is like risk and taking risk, and that's where you feel alive um, and all that. Do you? I've also had experiences where, and maybe this is where healing or process comes in, is like where I'm taking a risk, but it doesn't have me feel alive. It just has me, maybe it has me feel like fucking terrified or something like that. And I guess that is alive. It's just, it's like a version of alive, maybe that's like, or maybe not, but is it like, how do you go about like knowing or taking the risks that actually empower and have you feel alive versus like those risks that are trigger panic or some version of that? Like, is it just kind of to be
Your
expected?
experience is the guide,
Yeah,
right? Your
yeah,
experience is the guide. So I think it was Mihai Csikszentmihalyi that came up with the challenge versus skill
yeah,
matrix.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And so if we go above that line where the challenge is far greater than our skill, then we're going to experience overwhelm and anxiety. There's a few of those experiences up there. If we're playing below, if the challenge doesn't meet our skill level, then we're bored and we get drained and
yeah,
whatever,
yeah,
right? So our experiences are our guide, and I think this is where folks that are a little more sensitive to their internal world can benefit from this.
mm-hmm.
And so we know going in, resistance is going to show up and give us really good seductive reasons for why we shouldn't do something. But
Sure,
that's a little different than saying, okay, this is a scary thing for me. Where's just that tiny step that would have me feel more alive instead of, oh my God, now I'm getting blown out,
yeah,
right? So it's
okay,
like
yeah,
learning how to drive a car. You've got a foot on the throttle and you get to decide how much you want to go. I think where we get into trouble is we get into scripts. I should be going faster. I should be
yeah,
doing more.
there it
I
is.
should be meeting the expectations of others. I should do this to please those people. I should do this to prove that I'm a real man or I'm a real
Yeah,
entrepreneur, whatever.
yeah, yeah,
So that stuff has us check out or disconnect from our internal experience. And it's like now we're flying blind. We really can't see what we're doing or how we're going. And that's how we end up in those places where we're overwhelmed. But if we come back to it, we drop that need to please and prove and protect our egos in that way. We can come back and just say, all right, how do I want to drive this? Where's the sweet
yeah,
spot for me? And that's usually the gutsiest thing we can do because that's where we're embodying ourselves. And it's like, well, wait, I might not measure up to these other people's. I might not measure up to my own image of how I'm supposed to be. And that can be confronting. But
yeah,
ultimately, if we're willing to let go of that egoic self-image stuff, we can find that place where we're taking little chances, our skill levels meeting the challenge, and we're stretching it just a little bit at a time. And that's where we'll feel more alive. Doesn't mean you're going to get a
yeah.
green light and everybody's on board like, yeah, Yahoo. But it will be, it's like, okay, here we go. I can handle this. I got
Yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah. That's huge, man, because I think like I know from my experience like the problems I get into is I could be coming from that place of wanting to prove or wanting to please something on the outside, and then I automatically complicate it or make it like, oh, I need to go into overdrive instead of just saying that very next thing. That if I was more like not coming from that place of proving, but okay, I'm gonna do I'm gonna do things something that works and feels pretty good to me, and I'm gonna take a little step. Like so, I think that's monstrous.
Yeah,
So
if you can
yeah,
really tap into who's running the show, oh, it's that part of me that needs to prove something. It's the part of me that needs to please somebody. It's the part of me
yeah,
that needs to protect. I'm convinced I'm in danger, so I'm trying to protect something.
yeah, yeah,
A lot of that we can slow down and it's like, is it really true? Is it real? Do I really need to protect something? Am I really in huge danger that I need to blow myself out here? Is it really true I have to do this to please somebody? Would I be okay if that person didn't give a damn or whatever, was disappointed? Do I really need to prove anything to anybody? The
yeah,
answer's no, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
this is where we start to find the fun, is when we drop the protecting and the pleasing and the proving. It's like, oh well, now I can just do the thing that I'm committed to doing, and that has me feel more free, alive, and loving and at peace. And it sounds easy, but it sounds simple, but it's not necessarily easy. But that's
yeah,
where we find more of those experiences of flow, where we feel more alive.
yeah. And so like that piece of flow and feeling more alive, following those kind of core emotions that you just talked about: peace, freedom, aliveness. Like, what do you think about like things like, um, as opposed to resistance when you're trying to get to something, but then you've got momentum and you're starting to quote unquote win, and like engage yourself and be connected to those experiences and get into flow. Like, do you ascribe to trying to optimize things like flow and like get just like deeper, or is it like, do you think that's another form of resistance? Or I'm just curious what your experience of like flow and how it's talked about at large is something to be have an eye on, or is it like
I
yeah
don't fetish. I don't let flow become a fetish. I think it's easy to turn flow into a thing where we lose it. That
yeah
makes sense.
yeah yeah, it's like like attachment or
It's like
something.
turning sex into a practice. You got to be really careful about that.
Yeah
Like where it turns into work.
yeah yeah, it's not, and
There's
it
people
yeah
that study relating to the point where they're not even relating anymore. They're just doing skills with each other. They're just, oh, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to reflect what this person just said. But they're not actually having a back and forth anymore. You
sure
know what I mean?
yeah oh
So
yeah
I think there's this thing where
yeah
we learn the skill and now we're doing the skills, but we're not actually jiving with one another. And I think that our approach to things like flow or freedom, the more we tend to zero in on them and try to go for them, the more we get white knuckled around them, the more they go away. It's like the guy that wants to get laid, so he puts on a ton of cologne and goes out to the bar. He's repulsive at that
yeah
part,
yes
right?
yeah
It's
yeah
so obvious to the rest of the world,
yeah
but he's like, I'm getting laid tonight. He sprays himself down. So I think there's a point where we can kind of lose it and just come up, so when I hear the work of like all the optimization and the maximization and that mindset, I'm, I watch out. I watch out for that kind of stuff. Because to
okay
me, it's like, all right, is this how you'd screw? Is this how you'd have sex? Is it
yeah
playful? Is it just, are you able to just roll with it and have fun in the moment, be really engaged, but not turn it into, okay, great. Now we're going to use this technique and we're going to do that. It's like, if that turns you on, if that's exciting for you, that's great, but it's not really my bag.
cool yeah, I just really wanted to know your, since I know you've interviewed people on flow, and you just kind of mentioned it, and I was curious about what you kind of thought of trying to go for higher and higher states versus just, what, let me just kind
I
of.
watch out for that state chasing stuff. That's always you got to
Okay,
watch out for that.
cool, all right, awesome, thanks for your thoughts
You
on
got to be
that.
careful.
Yeah, so just kind of want to slightly change directions a little, not directions, but maybe just topics. Like so like in my work with you, like it's been like instrumental in like growing up, I would say. Like in the past, like when I first started working with you, there was a point where I was almost going to sabotage my relationship, and we and Angela have a joke that like my work with you kind of saved our relationship at one point. But it's also like opened me up to a lot of like other relationships, like work with your wife, her connections to her, and so it's been like a catalyst for like a lot of personal and spiritual transformation. Just meeting you and all that, and then like, and then also just the work I've done with you around like business stuff and kind of getting the foundation. Like I'm seeing how I'm getting momentum and having some like results from work I did with you then. But I think like
That's a
the
while back too.
yeah, a while back, yeah. I
Yeah.
think like the thing that's like sitting with me or maybe integrating as a result of this kind of long line of like stuff, years of stuff, is like a creative fire or a power that I haven't felt before is kind of coming up and rising. And I'm having a visceral experience of like having my desires feel more adult now than say opposed to like just a kind of like a middle of the road like childish desire or something. Like and I was thinking about like what you've talked about, like the child and the adult, and that kind of like the adult's responsible for that child. And I'm just kind of curious, like and knows how they feed each other. And I guess I'm curious for you, like what's that? I'm noticing my current life as I get into my like later 30s that I'm seeing the child be more excited by some of the stuff that it once would have been like, oh fuck, I don't want to do that. It's like we talked. I think it's like work is becoming more fun and like getting like integrating, and so instead of just like it's always this thing on the side that I do. Though I do still like doing things on the side. But like for you, I'm curious, like what's your relationship like for your adult and child like these days, and like how's it showing up in your life? How do you guide that relationship? And yeah,
Well, I would say that in theory, because there's a gap, right? So in theory, my aim is to have a really healthy, vibrant, enthusiastic child in me.
yeah,
I want to have a relationship to that young part of me. That
yeah,
young part of me is the one that is curious and wants to check things out and wants to go explore what life has to offer, and is also where my joy and wonder and awe, the things that make the experiences that make life so amazing, I tend to think sit in the realm of that younger part of myself,
yeah,
because they were there as a child. They were
yeah, yeah,
there, right? Like I've always had them. So the fear or the concern, I'll just say the concern, the challenge or the opportunity is to allow a safe space for that child to continue to inhabit the world. And so it's, in theory, my adult is the one that protects that child
yeah,
as I grow up. And it's the adult that's in service of the child. It's not usually how it works, whereas the adult's like, I got stuff to do. You need to shut up. I got things you need to quit whining, or you need to, quit wanting so much or being
yeah,
such a pain in the ass because I got bills to pay. I got to do this thing. I got to finish this thing. I got to take care of my obligations and duties. So it's really easy to stifle that young, creative, vivacious part of us.
yeah, yeah,
And so to answer your question, I have a philosophy about how I like to approach and see my inner world, but it's also real work to come back and be like, oh yeah, I haven't really gotten in touch with that young part of me lately,
yeah,
and
yeah,
just done things because I love to do them, or just follow things because I love to do them. It's really easy as we get older to say, well, I'll justify doing that if it'll make me money.
yeah,
I'll justify doing that if it'll have me spend more time with my family. I'll justify doing that if it'll lead to some other cool opportunity. We typically don't give ourselves permission to just say, hey, you know what? I just want to do that. That sounds fun.
yeah,
And that's hard because, especially for men, there's this thing, or yeah, and women, right? There's a thing of like, well, that's going to take time away from my business, or it's going to take time away from my family. And I can't really justify doing that because it doesn't bring anything back to my family. But
hmm,
I think those are the things we got to lean into and have really solid relationships with our partners, and say, well, wait a second, my relationship with this person and my career, my profession are here to support and empower my ability to go do these things in my life, not
yeah,
get in the way. And I
yeah,
hope that at some time I'll be able to get around to doing those things. Once my career's satisfied, once my partner and my child are satisfied, then I'll go do these things. It's like, No, I want to have those things be the wind at my back and say, go, 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 have fun. So that's where Allison's wonderful in my world. Christmas, she gave me, a week up at a rallycross driving school. Like she
Nice.
knows how to touch into that young part of me and be like, go, go, go,
Yeah,
go,
yeah.
have fun,
Supports that.
embrace that stuff.
Yeah,
And that's where it feels great to know you got allies in your life
yeah,
that say, hey, I see you. I want you to go play. I want you to go have these experiences of awe and wonder and aliveness and freedom.
that's awesome, man. It's cool to hear your own experience of having that support, but also it just helps me be grateful for having some version of that for myself with Angela, and also yeah, and just kind of realizing like not everyone has that support, and so that's like a pretty cool thing to have someone who's outside of you who's actually watching and has their eye on your inner kind of relationship. Like that's huge.
It's usually flipped, right? I'll
Yeah,
I'll allow myself to go have fun. I'll allow myself to go feel alive and free once I've pleased everybody and I've protected these things and I've proven that we have all these conditions.
yeah,
And once I've met all these conditions, then I'll go do that thing. It's like, well, then I wonder why I'm so drained, why I feel so
yeah,
trapped, why
yeah,
I feel so unmotivated. And it's like, yeah, why would you? Right? Because we've stifled that young part of ourselves.
yeah, yeah,
So it's where the adult comes in and say, hey, you know what? It's not your job, child. Speaking to the child, it's not your job to run this business. It's not your job to navigate this relationship. Let me clear the path. Let me protect you, and let's go create spaces for you to play.
awesome, man. Yeah, it's in service of the child, and yeah, that more life.
And
I
it
love
takes
it.
work. It's
Yeah, and it
hard.
takes work. Yeah, I
Yeah,
appreciate you
not easy.
shining a light on that. That it's not something that's like set it and forget it, and it's continuous
Or I
kind
did
of.
it once. I did it. I did that back in 2015. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Thank you. Like so from there, like I want to talk about like authority. Like I think you call it authority. Um, in my own experience, like it's taken a lot of time and like growing to get to the place where it's like we are talking about. Like it's you got to stay at the wheel, and it's like like coming to know my desires and what really works for me, and owning my power and all that has been a trial and error process. Not like I just flipped a switch and all of a sudden I have it. I know it's there, but sometimes it feels like it's been like this journey of trial and error. And I'm just wondering like if you have any like thoughts or advice on like mindset or behaviors to get to an experience of authority quicker for people that really want to start working on their sense of inner guidance or authority.
Well, that process you talked about, to me, I interpret it as like it's not linear.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah,
Okay. So the first thing we want to get rid of is this expectation that anything that we do is linear. There's nothing in our world that's linear,
yeah,
right? Everything's up and down. Everything can be 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. It's just wacky like that. So
yeah,
the expectation that we have, like, oh, great, I read this book and it's the 3 steps to do X, Y, Z, and I'm just going to execute 3 steps. No, it doesn't work that way. Like those
yeah,
might be nice principles, but everything we do is going to be a huge experiment. So first and foremost, it's going to be nonlinear. There's going to be fits and spurts, and it's always going to be a constant experiment. So drop the set it and forget it. This idea that now you have a glimpse and you've got a handle on your authority. Well, guess what? It's going to change,
yeah,
right? So that's what we get to keep experimenting. That's the point here is like that part of us that just wants one of my coaches, Phil Stutz, says it calls it exoneration. We're going to be done. We won't have to have any more uncertainty. We won't have any more effort. We won't have to feel any more pain. Like we're seeking that finish line where that's done. Not going to happen.
yeah,
So if we just relax and be like, cool, this is always going to be an experiment, always going to be stepping into uncertainty and trying things out, then cool. I can start to relax that that's part of the process, and I'm not getting it wrong if I'm feeling that uncertainty and I want to continue to experiment.
yeah,
So I would say that that's a big part. And then number two, you got to understand what you're playing for. So this is a much longer conversation, but I believe that beyond the outcomes that we want and the results that we want, there's a very kind of achiever mindset. As a coach, a lot of people come to me, they want results. They want outcomes. Hey,
sure,
Tripp, I want to make X amount a year. I want to build my business to here. I want to get a girlfriend. I want to blah, blah, blah. Like we look at it through that lens. I say, great, you can have those outcomes, but I want to be really clear about what the experiences are you imagine those outcomes are going to be. So if you got that business, you made that amount of money, you had this girlfriend in your life, what do you imagine the experience would be? Because if you got that money and that girlfriend and blah blah and you still felt trapped, you
Yeah.
still felt drained,
Yeah.
you still felt isolated, you still felt stressed out or bored out of your mind, you'd be like, what the hell?
Yeah.
So what that tells me, those experiences, if we miss the mark and we end up with those experiences, it tells me that in our mind we've got a theory, we're really playing for freedom, aliveness, peace, and love.
Yeah.
No matter what, no
Yep.
matter what we're doing, we're curing cancer. We are bodhisattvas here to save souls. It doesn't matter what we choose to do. Ultimately, in our inside of ourselves, there's a sense that we're on track or off track based on how well we're expanding into freedom, aliveness, peace, and love.
Yeah.
Beyond just being comfortable, beyond just feeling safe, beyond just making sure that people like us, we want to have those experiences. And so when we understand that we're ultimately playing for freedom, aliveness, love, and peace, then we can start to look at it through that lens and you say, okay, well, now I can use those as gauges. And now I can design my business in such a way. Where do I feel more free and alive and more connected and more peaceful? I can use that to gauge my relationships. How are they empowering me and allowing greater freedom, aliveness, love, and peace in my life? How do I treat my body? Where do I live in the world? All of
Yeah.
these choices are either the wind in our face making it harder, or they're the wind at our back. And so when we talk about authority, it's just that awareness to say, I make hundreds of choices every day, and which ones are working against what I ultimately want.
Yeah.
Really simple, but nonetheless very challenging if we're stuck in a mindset where we're protecting and pleasing and proving. When we're choosing that kind of survival-based stuff, I won't be okay unless I have X amount in the bank. I won't be okay unless people think I'm okay, right?
Yeah.
Like there's all of that kind of stuff that'll have us play to exist and be comfortable and survive, but that's not the same as being joyful or fulfilled.
Yeah. Oh man, I love that. And yeah, so I'm here. I heard that it was like, giving yourself that space and permission to experiment, but then also coming back to these core experiences of freedom, peace, aliveness, and love as the kind of two pieces of. I know that's simplifying it, but it's a process that one has to engage continuously. But having those kind of dynamics online is the kind of the operating system for authority, so to speak.
And that'll be different,
Yeah.
right? If you really hone in and you commit to that, it'll be different than, well, I should do this because that's what everybody else is doing. I should
Yeah.
do this other thing because that's what this other guy's doing. I heard him on a podcast and he
Yeah.
said this, blah, blah, blah. You can drop all of that, or you can use it, right? You can see if it works for you. But ultimately, the gauge is not, I'm doing it as well as that guy,
Sure.
right? I do this routine, this morning routine that this other guy does. Well, is it working for you? Or are you
Sure.
just
Yeah.
getting better at copying shit,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if ultimately come back to your experience and say, yeah, this is helping me. I feel stronger in the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
Or it's like, no, I'm waking up at 4 a.m. and I'm doing all this dumb stuff and taking all these supplements, but I feel miserable. It's like, okay, well, let's take a look at that. Why would you continue to do that then if it's not
Yeah.
working for you?
Yeah. Yeah. That's all. Yeah. I mean, that's huge. Like, and I appreciate like the way that you distilled it because I've used this practice of like the four key things, and sometimes I'll switch the names of them and to guide the day or to kind of like gauge how I'm doing in relation to what I want to be experiencing. And what do you think like are the I heard you mention proving, pleasing, and how, there's this voice over here, and I'm copying this guy. Like, in your experience, like in coaching people and stuff, like what do you find is the things that stop people from like really getting into a practice like being finding authority or inner guidance? Like, is it those? Is it those things?
Yeah,
Those kind
we
of
are committed.
yeah,
We are we are committed, and understandably so. We're committed to um, being safe.
yeah,
So let's break that down. What does safe mean? It means I'm gonna be comfortable.
yeah,
Whatever that means, it means I'm gonna be feel some sense of security. And I like to like comfort means let's talk about just kind of like physical comfort and emotional comfort. So
yeah,
I don't want to go live in my car, and I also don't want to go into conversations that are going to be a little weird, right? So I
Yeah.
avoid those kinds of things. There's a sense of safety, meaning I'm not going to put my money or my time or my energy at risk. We're committed to that. And then the third one, the big one, is I'm going to make sure I don't do anything to look like a moron.
Yeah.
Okay. So people will usually blame the reason why they're not moving forward on I don't know what to do. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough time, or I'm not willing to spend this or that. But most of the time, what I find that the thing that will always grind somebody to a halt is that if they are committed to like, I've got to make sure I don't look like a loser, like a failure, whatever. There's a word in there for them
Gotcha.
that feels like death.
Yeah.
And if it goes against the story they like to tell about themselves and broadcast to the world, they won't do it. And this even goes for people that are like, I'm not vain. I don't have a problem. I don't care what people tell me. Like, really, go put on a pink tutu and go into a hardware store and ask for some parts. And you'll find where that tough guy that acts like he doesn't care, you'll find a spot where he's like, there's no way.
Oh
There's
man,
no way I will do that thing.
that's huge.
They'll
Yeah.
give money. But there's some part where we're committed. We just are.
Yeah.
So if we understand that we're already committed to that stuff, then we can we can be creative around it and just say, look, is it really true I would die if I was a little bit uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Is it really true I would die if I took a risk with my time or energy and money? Well, I could make my money back. I could do this. You can start to get creative around that thing. And is it really true I would die if somebody thought I was a moron?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where you start to loosen up and you realize, okay, those are the three things that are basically holding me back. And I can now make choices around them. I can start to see what I'm willing to risk. But a lot of times they're so underneath the radar, most of us don't know. And they're the monsters under the bed, and we haven't taken a flashlight to them and taken a look and like, oh my God, there's really nothing here. But we sense that they're there, and we just don't do anything to challenge it.
Wow. Yeah. So it's the unconscious blind spots that people aren't taking a look at, and because they haven't put themselves up against that commitment to those other experiences, the peace, love, aliveness, and what was the other one?
Freedom.
Freedom. Yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this is where people start to beat themselves up. What's wrong with me? I must not want. I must not be a real brave. It's just like not really true, right? But if you just understand, like, what am I so committed to that I think is going to happen, right? Oh, I think if I go down this road, I'm going to be trapped in a relationship, and I won't be able to do anything about it. I think if I try this out, I won't have any money anymore, and I'll have to live on the street. I'm afraid if I go down this road, my friends and family won't love me anymore. There's just things where, if we can start to tease those things out, when we get them out in the open, there's a thing like, oh, that's not so bad. Or, okay, maybe that does seem really bad, but are there things that we can do around that?
Yeah.
I had one guy one time who tell me that he wasn't finishing his book because I'm not making fun of him. I want you to just see how big these monsters can get in our mind.
Yeah.
He was afraid to release his book because it meant he might have to go on Oprah, and then he'd have people be able to criticize him.
Yeah. He went way off. Yeah.
Right. And it seems like, okay, well, if I don't release my book, I don't have to ever worry about going on Oprah. And it was like, wow, really? It's kind of like I worry about standing on the beach and having a shark jump up on the beach and eat me. It's like that's highly unlikely that that's going to happen. Right?
Sure.
So when you identify it, you're just like, oh, wow, that sounds kind of silly, but that's the thing that's holding me back. So, all right, let's go with it.
So seeing those monsters and getting them out, and not necessarily understanding them, just, oh, that's it, it's out there now. Now I can work with, kind of like becoming present, and then I can appreciate it, but then I can go back to what I'm trying to do or experience or create.
Right.
That's awesome. Right. Yeah. Thanks for talking about that, because I know that we all have experienced those little things in some way.
They're big.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about like, I guess like what would be maybe the spiritual stuff or mysterious kind of things in your work. Like I just kind of, it seems, I don't know if it's true, but like, I've seen you take like kind of playful jabs at like in interviews at like stuff like law of attraction and things like that. Or would you agree or?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I just want to say so. Like, and then it's funny because like I also listened to like a Phil Stutz interview on the tools. I know you've worked with him, and he kind of has a similar like he doesn't, from what I gather, he didn't seem to think an idea of like the law of attraction was particularly helpful in getting people to kind of create and engage. And but he did talk about something. It's not law of attraction, but he calls it the field. Are you familiar with that?
A little bit. I'm not that familiar with his beliefs on that stuff, but
Okay, well, I'll tell you a little bit about it, and then see if you think about it. But I guess it's kind of like the sense, maybe it's like this idea that like someone who's creating something. This is an example, and then they kind of pull in. They kind of show up. Ideas show up, and then entrepreneurially, I guess it's kind of like it could be experienced as like something you're engaged and you've got your things, and all of a sudden you need to make some money or something, and then you don't know where it's going to come from, and then all of a sudden it shows up. Like, do you have experience with that? I know I have, and I'm like, it feels like it's a little like mystical, and I'm wondering, or some version of that, or like, whoa, how's this working out? Like, do you have any thoughts on that type of like experience or occurrence or beliefs or lack of beliefs around like what's going on there?
well, let's go back. So the
Okay.
things that I am aggressive
Yeah.
towards
Yeah.
are anything that promotes a false hope.
Cool. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the reason why I go after that stuff and I don't pull punches with it is because it empowers a victim mentality.
Yeah.
It empowers a victim mentality. It takes us out of a creator mindset, which is, okay, given that this is what's going on, how do I want to show up? How do I want to be in the world? Who am I going to talk to? How do I want to address this thing?
Yeah.
I don't like things that promote a belief that we can sit back and somebody's going to save us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't like to promote anything that gives us a false hope that we're going to be rescued.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is different than being helped, which is
Yes.
different than being supported. But I think for a lot of us, we so desperately want to be rescued and we so desperately want to be saved. And I'm not talking about like in a Christian sense. I'm talking about like, I've got this big challenge in my life to go create my business, or I've got this big challenge in my life to go do something in my relationship, and I don't want to engage it. So let me go believe in this thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then I won't have to take responsibility for it.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring out a howitzer, and I'm going to go to town on that belief. Because what pisses me off about it is that it
Yeah.
removes us from being the driver in our lives.
Yeah.
Now, what I imagine Stutz is pointing to is not, hey, if you think it and wish it,
Yeah.
it'll come.
Yeah. I don't think so either.
It's a matter of how are you going to show up in your life and be bold? How are you going to show up in your life and take responsibility? And what I found is that when you engage the world and you're bold with and transparent about what you're doing and what you want, meaning you've dropped that part of you that needs to hide and needs to protect and needs to please and need to prove, and you're willing to show up and say, this is what I stand for, this is what I'm putting out in the world, suddenly we can see you for as you are. You might be open to some criticisms,
Sure.
but at the same time, people are like, oh shit, you got to meet so-and-so. You've got to have a sit down with this person or that person. There's things that can start to move in that way.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
Chris Rock said something one time. He said, oh, man, I wish I could remember. You have to look it up because it was beautiful. He was like,
Yeah.
he had a flat tire one day, or his car broke down, and he sat next to the car for hours and nobody helped him. And he started pushing his car, and immediately somebody pulled over to help him. And I
Yeah.
think there's something beautiful in there when we're sitting there waiting for something to come along
Mm-hmm.
and save us. It's not going to happen. But
Yeah.
when we say, hey, you know what? I value myself. I value my life enough, and I'm going to push my car. That's when we find like all kinds of it's seemingly weird shit starts to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great way yeah, a great story, a visual story to kind of get that concept.
And I'll be really clear that my aggression towards false hope is rooted in living in Boulder for a long time and even wanting to buy into that stuff, like wanting to
Yeah.
believe that things weren't happening for me the way that I wanted them to because I needed to heal something,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or I needed to clear something in my field or some kind of bullshit like that. And it was like, it's like saying, you know what? I don't know why my armpits continue to stink. I must need to go do some more spiritual work. It's like, or you could clean your armpits.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could actually get some soap and a freaking rag and clean your armpits. So there was a thing. It was like when I looked at how much time and energy I was putting towards creating something. Oh no, I wasn't doing that because that was vulnerable, that was scary, that was risky. I wanted to go find this shortcut, this way around doing that work and taking responsibility and pushing my own car. And that's
Yeah.
what was blocking the ability for me to be helped by others. So
Gotcha.
that's more my position. That's where I sense that things can happen.
Yeah.
You got to put skin in the game. You can't put skin in the game and be like, okay, now universe, come save me. A lot
Yeah.
of people want to do that. Like I did my thing. I did a little bit. Why isn't it happening? There's still that victim mentality of like, I'm entitled. I'm entitled to help. I'm entitled to the universe, whatever that means, to come and do this for me. And
Yeah.
I
Oh
honestly, I
man.
want to
Yeah.
punch people right in the mouth when I hear that kind of shit. And the
Yeah.
reason why I feel aggressive around that is like, it's like, stop feeding this idea.
Yeah.
Stop perpetuating this idea that keeps people small.
Yeah, man. I love hearing your fire around it because I think when you just because I think I've heard on interviews where you kind of like maybe the guest will say something and you'll kind of like like just make a little kind of comment, like playful comment. And I was always curious. I was like, what does Tripp really think about this stuff? And I love hearing the part about the victim piece because that clarifies exactly how I could see why you would have like this kind of like like false hope and victim keeping people victim, and and yeah, I could see how that would not be helpful for people to
Yeah.
not engage and not be in touch with their creative power and doing what they can do. And yeah, and I've fallen into places where I know I've gotten to that rescue place or something's trying to rescue me, and I feel that anger and that I'm pissed off that I let myself believe in the false hope, and then so I've had an experience of being pretty pissed about some of that stuff. So
I think a lot of us get into personal and spiritual development to be saved, to be
yeah,
rescued.
yeah,
We get into personal and spiritual development to try to find exoneration.
yeah,
So I went through a huge loss in my 20s. My spiritual and personal growth came out of that, but it was years before I realized, oh my God, I'm doing this stuff so I never have to feel that way ever again. I was looking for an escape.
yeah,
I wasn't necessarily moving towards something. I was trying to find a place where I could get away from ever having to feel scared or hurt or vulnerable again.
wow,
So it's good to understand what we're really playing for when we engage this stuff,
yeah,
because are we moving towards what we want to create, the freedom, aliveness, peace, and love? Are we simply just trying to get away? We're running away because one's a hunter and the other's prey.
yeah.
So I want you to look at where your eyes are right
In the
now,
front of the
right?
head, yeah,
Zebra has their eyes, they're prey, right? Their eyes are
yeah,
on the side of their head. Our eyes are on the front. We go for what we want.
yeah,
And so that's what I want to be an advocate for here, is watching where we're looking outside of ourselves for somebody else to take the responsibility for us, somebody else to take the burden away from us of having to take care of ourselves. And I find that incredibly disempowering for people. And it
cool,
doesn't mean that people aren't going to do it. They want to give up their power. There's plenty of people that will manipulate you and take your money and feed you lines of bullshit all day long.
yeah,
But I really don't find that that's where we are most expansive.
awesome. Thank you for
I
sharing. Yeah,
think it feeds anxiety.
yeah,
It
yeah,
feeds anxiety. It feeds depression. It's like, because we don't really get to experience that we can sit in the wheel and drive for ourselves.
yeah. Like I think I remember watching one of your videos is talking about like joy, anxiety is anxiety breeding power and powerlessness are fuel some version of like not engaging, and it was like joy is actually engaging and being and creating, and like that's a real, and to me that's a little different than like the joy of like like I'm gonna just kind of be in like the sunshine and the beauty and all that, like kind of like that more, I guess you could label it like spiritual or like floaty or something like that, than like the engagement of like being inside the creative act and taking the risk and So it's
There's
like,
masculine and feminine.
yeah,
You
there you go. Yeah, yeah,
There's
there you
one
go.
receptive,
One receptive.
one
Yeah,
is one is active, right?
yeah,
So there,
yeah,
it's not that they're in one is greater than the other. They're just different. So there's a
yeah,
joy that we can get by simply being. We can wake up and experience the joy of just being here,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
If we don't let fear and our low self-esteem and our sense of not enough get in the way, our joy is right there. Our freedom, aliveness, peace, and love is right
So it's,
there.
yeah, it's both. Yeah, it's the
And
both.
then
Yeah,
there's the other aspect of it is like, okay, but I also want to create something in the world. I want to go help
yeah,
people. I want to
yeah.
serve. I've got something that wants to live through me and as me. That arrows, like boom, I've got this thing that wants to come in. And so that's where we penetrate the world. Okay, well, that's where we're going to be confronted, right? Who am I? Who am I to do this thing in the world? Who
Yeah.
am I to create and put this stuff out there? Oh, what are people going to think? All of that kind of stuff starts to show up. And there's a joy on the other side of expressing that and putting that out in the world. But they're just two sides of the same coin.
Okay.
It's
Yeah,
masculine and
yeah,
feminine.
yeah. Because I think I'd struggled with the idea of joy inside of the penetration part for a while. Like, because I was really good at like that being piece and feeling that joy, and I was like, well, this is joy. So that penetrating thing, I don't know if that's joy. That might just be like, I think I was tying up that proving piece inside of it or something, and so it
Yeah.
wasn't coming out and like it's like a pure form or just pure form or some version of that. So
Yeah. So what would I do if I wasn't here to prove? If you sit with that long enough, I think there's still a part of us that wants to do something in this lifetime. We still feel drawn to things. We still feel called.
yeah,
So
awesome.
I think that's an aspect worth listening to. I think I always a little suspect of when we tend to be like, no, it's this way. It's like, well, no. What if I can have that receptive place of yes, there's joy in simply being, but also okay, now from this place, what do I want to create? How do I want to show?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm loving that experience and realization of that I've had more recently, like that dynamic and how good that feels instead of like just trying to do one side or something.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And if you
So
just understand through that lens, it doesn't mean gender,
yeah,
but that it's feminine and masculine. Just watch that some of us will have a preference for one or the other.
yeah,
And you just recognize like, okay, well, I'm in a phase of my life where I'm loving this masculine expression of this. I
cool,
want to go and penetrate the world. I want to go deliver. I want to create this. I want to make my splash. And
cool.
it doesn't have to be driven from a place of proving. I think you'll find that it's not 100% that. There'll still be an egoic part of it. It's like, oh, yeah, watch out, I'm kicking some ass, right? But that other part is just like, we don't have to make it wrong. And there might be just a time where it's like, yeah, I just want to be in a more receptive place here.
Yeah. Thanks, Tripp. I appreciate you sharing your thoughts on that. And
But yeah,
yeah.
smack somebody. He tries to feed you false hope, though.
All right. No, yeah, I'm all for like getting rid of the bullshit. So I want to get down to what actually works and keeps you in real joy. Um, so I guess maybe my last question would be, like in your one of your tagline today would be like your tagline is like uh, one of the things you say is you help people make a living doing what they were put on this earth to do, and I'm wondering like where's that coming from for you? Like, is that like is there some deeper thoughts, beliefs, philosophies, or is it just kind of like just the way you're grabbing attention? Like, where's saying something like that coming from for you?
I think it comes back to what we just talked about.
Yeah,
That sense of I feel called, I feel drawn to
called.
give
Yeah,
this in my lifetime.
yeah,
And I don't think that money has anything to do with that.
yeah.
It's great if it does line up,
Sure,
awesome.
sure.
But
Yeah,
I think it's a huge mistake when we say, you know what, I'm not going to give myself permission to go do that thing because I can't justify it, because it's not going to make me money.
yeah.
Unfortunately, a lot of us are doing that. Oh,
Sure.
I'm not going to go do the thing that has me feel more alive, has me feel more expansive, gives me a sense of meaning in life because it doesn't overlay with my financial desires.
Yeah,
But there are people, some of us will find that, hey, you know what, this thing I feel called to do in this lifetime can be a way that I can earn money and do well with that. My career is like that. My
yeah.
profession's like that. And it will be really confronting. It's not going to be an easy
Hmm.
job. It's not going to be an
Yeah,
easy thing to create.
yeah,
And so that's where those are the folks that I love to work with that have that deep sense of calling, but then they're just like, gosh, this is so confronting for me. I'd much rather go do what I used to do where I just made money and blah, blah, but I
Yeah.
really can't go do that because it just like, I got to do this thing in my lifetime. So that's where, it can get a little wobbly. And that's where I love to help people that way.
Yeah, I love that, man. I think that's a reason why I've been attracted to working with you is like that, like being a visual artist, and it hasn't always been easy taking that certain path, but it's been worth it, or I wouldn't change it, and in some parts I would, but yeah, no, but it feels like a calling, and it feels like something that I'm, committed to figuring out one way or the other, and
And what a relief when we take the pressure off of the thing that we love to make money.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
there's this bullshit in our culture, which is like, follow your bliss and the money will follow. There's this thing like somehow if you get it right, you'll be rewarded with money. No, you won't.
yeah.
That's Southern California bullshit. That's more of that false hope, right?
I
So
love
I'm
it,
sorry,
man.
nothing
Yeah.
against you.
No, man. No, man.
But it is, right? There's just this thing of like, oh, if you're not doing it right, if you're not making a bunch of money at it,
Yeah.
right? The universe isn't rewarding. It's like, no,
Its own
that's
reward.
bullshit. It's
Yeah.
about joy.
Yeah.
So go do the thing that gives you joy. And if it impacts other people and they want to pay you for it, great. And if you're getting in your own way from receiving that money because you got hangups around money or you don't know have a skill set about how to do XYZ,
Yeah.
well, that's a practical thing you can work on.
Yeah.
You may just find, hey, you know what? I love doing this thing so much. To not do it would make me really sad. So I'm going to design my life in such a way that my relationships support me to do this. My living situation supports me to do this. My body supports me to do this. My career supports me to do this. I'm going to align all those things up so they're the wind at my back so I can go do these particular activities.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Quit making it more freaking complex than that. Like drop the money shit from it.
Yeah.
And really get in touch with the fact that there's a thing that we're here to do before we die, and that will change over our lifetime. It'll constantly change. And then just get out of the way. Go do that thing no matter what. But don't it just pisses me off when people put these conditions on that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Pisses me off because like you got this one shot to live. Like, go experience the love that is your birthright. Quit making it more difficult than it needs to be.
Yeah.
That's why I get frustrated with that.
No, I love your fire passion around that, man. So I agree with a lot of that. So yeah, I mean, thanks, man, for sharing your innards with us.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So we'll wrap up. But is there for anyone who's viewing this like and wants to learn more about what you're up to, or is interested in talking to you or working with you, where can they go and check out what you're up to?
Yeah, just go to the New Man.
The New Man Podcast.
You can find it anywhere you find your podcasts, and the newmanpodcast.com has all the episodes and all the information you might want there.
All right. I think that's a wrap today, Tripp.